Good evening, I'm Mark Ivy. Welcome to the latest edition of Kernels from the Cornfield. No huss, no hulls, no shucks. News with a dash of commentary to spice up your fare for Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. Slow boat to China. Nah, it's just a slow-moving Navy ship carrying Ahmed Abu Khattala, alleged leader of the September 11, 2012 raid on the U.S. diplomatic mission in Benghazi, Libya, which resulted in the murder of 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador, back to the shores of the U.S. of A. This is giving U.S. military and intelligence personnel time to interrogate Khattala without the protection of the American civil judicial system once he is on U.S. soil and turned over to civilian authorities for prosecution. Will the journey produce actionable intelligence, or will it be a dance of futility? Perhaps the questioning will reveal why over a year ago CNN's Ara Diamond was able to meet Khattala openly at a cafe for an interview where he stated he had never been questioned by U.S. investigators, yet it wasn't until Tuesday that Special Forces took him captive. This timing is suspect. When the U.S. government is in a dither, and as one CNN reporter remarked on yesterday's Kernels, in deep doo-doo, this will not prove distraction over the quandary the White House finds itself. Whether you try and romanticize it and call it manure, or put a comic spin with doo-doo, the reality is President Barack Obama and his administration has landed head deep in a pile of Shiite. All the big name capture in the world are not going to turn the public's attention away from the crisis which is putting boots on the ground, even if called special forces or protective details. Returning to the Persian Gulf. Dire word coming out of Iraq today of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, forces attacking and taking control of much of the oil nation's largest refinery. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is claiming government troops are repelling the insurgents and taking back the refinery. And you thought gas prices are too high now? Reuters is reporting that Exxon is pulling its employees and their families out of the besieged nation. This brings back memories to the early 1990s when my uncle worked in the oil fields of Iraq and Kuwait. I recall him and my aunt being swept out of the region in the dark of night as the soldiers of Saddam Hussein laid claim to the emirate. I can imagine how families here in the States are feeling hearing of their relatives being rescued from the ravages of war. Meanwhile, at the White House, President Barack Obama is surrounded by his National Security Council and military brass, looking for a miracle which will stop ISIS in its tracks while not being forced to defend the Shiite dictator Maliki. Meeting this afternoon with the top 4 leaders in Congress, House Speaker John Boehner, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the President is discussing a formal request from the government of Iraq for U.S. airstrikes. Hawks are clamoring for action, while doves are imploring the President to turn a deaf ear to the cries being heard around the world. One voice speaking out on the Iraq situation and should stay quiet in retirement is former Vice President Dick Cheney. Cheney brought out the worst in armchair quarterbacks in an op-ed today, putting full blame on the President while ignoring the mistakes of his and President George Bush's administration. Truth is, it may be fun to look back and debate. The issue is what to do with the cards we've been dealt at this moment in time. Whether Bush should have done things differently in agreeing to pull out of Iraq by 2011, or that Obama should have been more forceful in keeping a residual force in Iraq, may be nice exercises in what if, but not useful. We have to deal with where we are now and figure out how to proceed. Looking back and pointing fingers does not help with the here and now. Saudi Arabia is bristling and denying it is backing any terrorist groups and emphatically not supporting ISIS. What's in a name? With the ruling today that the Washington Redskins no longer have trademark protection of its team name, could a change from what the U.S. Patent Office determined was disparaging to Native Americans be in the near future? Or is this a case of political correctness run amok? The most recent polls find about 30% of Native Americans being offended by the team being named Redskins. Does the name matter? You decide. General Motors, or Government Motors, General Motors. The news continues to be bad for GM. Millions more of its product are being recalled. The recalls keep mounting while the sales keep soaring. What is going on? Now, in fairness, it seems most of the models being recalled are from the years when GM was Government Motors. Since it is back to General Motors, the recalls are at full throttle. Is this another blight on government's involvement in butting into private business? Reports are that though GM is paying out the wazoo on the recalls, GM owners are sold on the vehicles. GM vehicle owners keep trusting that the next model purchase will be the one that GM got right. Save the children. Contrary to some people's cries of a Mexican invasion of children crossing our southern border, it turns out the human tragedy of children, some as young as 4 years old, being swept up by the Border Patrol, are fleeing Honduras. And it appears that the Honduran government has been complicit in causing this crisis. Earlier today, that government pleaded with the U.S. to not send its children back home to a life of poverty and destitution. After an outcry to the Honduran request, Honduras is now setting up a program headed by the nation's First Lady to bring its children home. Mystery flight. Remember Malaysian Flight 370, which was lost a few months ago? Remember how a multi-million-dollar search came up empty? Seems experts now pinpointed with their best guess where the flight may have gone down in the Indian Ocean. But it is several hundred miles southwest to where the original search occurred. Stay tuned for the next 20 or 30 years, and maybe the mystery of Flight 370, with its lost passengers and crew, will be solved. New crown for Oklahoma. California is no longer the king of earthquakes. With two tremors shaking the nation's midsection in Oklahoma earlier today, the Sooner State has taken the billing as the state with the most seismic activity. Californians are breathing easier, knowing the eventual falling into the ocean may be a few more years yet to come. If not Hillary, who? Most agree that Hillary Clinton is running for president until she says she is not. More are agreeing following Tuesday's CNN town hall, in which the former First Lady danced all around the question of whether she's in or out of the 2016 race. Her answers sounded like a person with her sights set on the Oval Office. While polling last week showed that the majority of Democrats are in favor of a Hillary run, the poll also revealed enthusiasm was much lower and with only the most diehard Hillary fans. This begs the question, if not Hillary, who? One CNN reporter who commented on yesterday's Kernels is certain, and has been saying for a long time now, that Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is a shoo-in if Hillary does not seek the nomination. That reporter noted he knows of no other woman who could fill Hillary's shoes besides Warren. Then again, this is assuming that 2016 will be the year of the woman. That was the same assumption about 2008. We all know how that turned out. The Equality March. The U.S. 10th Circuit Court of Appeals today joined together 5 cases on same-gender equality from 4 states into one. The cases come from Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee. A 3-judge panel will hear each case and render judgment upholding or overturning the lower court decisions, which all found for same-gender couples. Other circuits have already heard appeals, but only the 10th has combined so many cases from 4 different states into one. The Cornfield is in the 10th Circuit jurisdiction. There are already pending Hoosier cases in a Louisville, Kentucky federal court opposing Indiana's state law banning equality for same-gender couples. The judge who will preside has already ruled against the state of Kentucky. That case is one of the 5 cases combined today. Resting in peace. I was remiss Tuesday in not noting the passing into the beyond a wonderful actress and civil rights defender, Ruby Dee. Though gone now in body, she will remain with us forever with her impressive body of work. That's what caught my attention for Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of Kernels from the Cornfield. I am Mark Ivy. Good evening.